Metformin, metformin, metformin. If you're living with diabetes, you've definitely heard of it. And if you're one of the 92.6 million people prescribed metformin, then you know it very well. But as any of those people will tell you, metformin might be advertised as the single pill to manage all of diabetes, but it's absolutely not your silver bullet solution. In fact, metformin is actually a Band-Aid solution that you might have been prescribed despite the fact that there's a good chance that your medication requirements are going to increase in the future, either with an increased dose of metformin itself or by adding other medications on top. Are you interested in learning more? Well, good, because in this video, we're going to touch on the all too familiar path for people who are prescribed metformin to get on the medication train to nowhere. We're also going to talk about why its real effects can sometimes differ from its promises, and why the most important aspect of metformin use is how it leads you away from the true solution to both prediabetes and type 2 diabetes, which is carefully planned lifestyle change. My name is Cyrus Khambatta. I have a PhD in nutritional biochemistry. I've helped thousands of people reverse, not manage, but reverse prediabetes, type 2 diabetes, and gestational diabetes. Here's the question. Are you ready to be the next one? Conservative estimates say that 120 million people worldwide are being prescribed metformin at any given time, and that 90 million of those people are in the United States, according to data published in 2020. What you're looking at is the number of annual metformin prescriptions between the years of 2004 and 2020 in the United States in millions. The upward trend indicates that between the years 2004 and 2020, the number of metformin prescriptions more than doubled from 40 million to 92.6 million. Let's put that number into context. According to Google, as of 2021, the population of the United States was 331.9 million people, which we can effectively round up to 332 million people. 92.6 million prescriptions divided by 332 million people represents almost 28% of the US population that has a prescription for metformin. 28%. That's almost 1 in 3 people. The next time you're at the grocery store, count the people you see. 1, 2, you have a metformin prescription. 4, 5, you have a metformin prescription. 7, 8, you have a metformin prescription. And even if you want to round that number down to 25%, then 1 in 4 people have a metformin prescription. No matter how you slice it, it's a large number. Statistically speaking, you absolutely know somebody who takes metformin. In fact, you probably know between 10 and 50 people who are taking it right now. Favored for its lack of hypoglycemic side effects, metformin is widely recommended as a safe, cost-effective, and first-line treatment for many conditions, including, but not limited to, prediabetes, type 2 diabetes, polycystic ovarian syndrome, otherwise known as PCOS, as well as gestational diabetes. Now, metformin was originally extracted from French lilacs and has been used as a medication to lower blood glucose for almost 60 years. Over time, metformin has been successfully synthesized in a laboratory and is now commonly used to lower blood glucose for people living with type 2 diabetes. Now, metformin has multiple mechanisms of action, which affect different tissues in various ways. The medication mainly interacts with your small intestine, with your liver, and with your muscle. In your small intestine, metformin acts by reducing the rate of glucose absorption into your blood. This reduces the net amount of glucose that enters your blood when you eat food, which helps you reduce your blood glucose values following a meal. Patients with type 2 diabetes often suffer from increased endogenous glucose production, otherwise known as EGP, which is the production of glucose from your liver. Reducing the rate at which your liver puts glucose into your blood is a very effective strategy to prevent unwanted blood glucose elevations. Metformin does this. It acts by reducing the rate at which your liver exports glucose into circulation, and therefore it decreases effectively the amount of glucose that comes from your liver into your blood. By reducing this rate of EGP, less glucose enters your blood from your liver, contributing to a lower blood glucose value, in addition to the effects in your small intestine. In your muscle, the action of metformin is not fully understood. Despite this, scientists have observed that metformin treatment results in the activation of an intracellular low-energy signal known as AMPK, which is AMP kinase. And that promotes an increased uptake of glucose from the blood. So metformin comes in both immediate acting and time release tablets, which can be prescribed depending on your particular needs. And metformin is usually prescribed in a smaller dose twice a day or in a single larger dose that can be taken with food. The typical starting dose of metformin is about 500 milligrams twice a day or 850 milligrams once a day taken with food. A common practice is for doctors to begin at this dose and then increase by 500 milligrams per week over the course of a few weeks as necessary. The recommended maximum daily dose of metformin is approximately 2,500 milligrams per day. So it's a highly prescribed diabetes medication, the first line of defense for the type 2 diabetes standard of care, and a medication that people desperately need to survive, right? Well, not so much. And that's why we're going to be taking the lens to metformin. So strap on your seatbelt and let's do a deep dive into everything that you need to know about this particular pharmaceutical medication. Now, let's start at the beginning. Imagine that you've been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. This is something that you thought would never happen to you. You might be a little bit overweight. Let's say you're somewhere between 10 and 50 pounds overweight, and you're aware of the fact that losing weight may help you reverse the underlying cause of type 2 diabetes, which is what we talk a lot about on this channel, and it's called insulin resistance. You might enjoy a little bit of cheat foods, you might have some tasty desserts, or you might have a few drinks every once in a while, but you don't fit the picture of type 2 diabetes that you've had in your head for many years. You don't fit the picture of type 2 diabetes that you see other people living with. It's a shock. It's confusing. It's emotionally scary. So you turn to your doctor because he or she is a medical professional and they can help you understand what to do to prevent things from becoming worse. Your doctor orders lab tests, checks your fasting blood glucose and your A1C level, and then uses their extensive medical training and the algorithm in their head to determine that you actually fit directly into the criteria for type 2 diabetes, which is that your A1C is greater than 6.5%, or your fasting blood glucose is 126 milligrams per deciliter or greater, or you take an oral glucose tolerance test and your 2-hour blood glucose is 200 milligrams per deciliter or more, or you take a random finger stick blood glucose at any time of the day and the result is 200 milligrams per deciliter or more. Chances are your doctor is likely to diagnose you with type 2 diabetes based on an A1C greater than 6.5% or a fasting blood glucose of 126 milligrams per deciliter or greater. And when that happens, they crank an advanced algorithm in their head again to determine what other health conditions you may have, including but not limited to things like hypertension, high cholesterol, high triglycerides, evidence of arterial plaque, obesity, especially in your visceral or trunk area, elevated liver enzymes, damaged kidneys, and more. And after putting the whole picture together, they decide that metformin is the most logical choice for medication to help lower your blood glucose. Now, common brand names for metformin in the United States include things like Glucophage, Glucophage XR, Glumetza, Fortamet, or Riomet. Now, most of the time, they don't provide you with any ideas or any descriptive ways to reverse the underlying cause that caused type 2 diabetes in the first place, again, called insulin resistance. So you just start blindly taking metformin because your doctor told you to, and you do it because you're scared that if you don't, that things could get worse. Unfortunately, after a few days or weeks, the side effects begin to kick in. Gastrointestinal problems like bloating, abdominal pain, cramping, nausea, diarrhea, general digestive discomfort, or loss of appetite begin to happen. You can also develop a vitamin B12 deficiency or lactic acidosis, both of which can be slightly harder to diagnose and can take some time to develop. Lactic acidosis in particular is not common in patients taking metformin and often occurs in patients with either a pre-existing medical condition that came before the use of metformin. In non-diabetic patients, lactic acidosis is associated with infection, cancer, liver failure, and renal failure. And in patients with type 2 diabetes, lactic acidosis is strongly associated with heart failure. Scientific evidence demonstrates that the most common causes of lactic acidosis are sepsis, liver disease, and respiratory failure. But enough about lactic acidosis. The most important thing is that if you feel worse with metformin than you did when you were first diagnosed, but you're still reassured that metformin is the right way moving forward, and you continue to use it, you just decide, you know what, I'm going to soldier on and just keep going. Or maybe the GI problems actually get worse over the course of time. And you might get prescribed another batch of a different medication to combat these side effects. And that's just the start of it because there may be more medication on the way. Now, side note, in 2020, there was a metformin recall that we have to talk about. The metformin recall happened because several brands of the drug were found to contain a compound known as N-nitrosodimethylamine, which is NDMA, at higher levels than is generally accepted by the FDA. This contamination was first discovered in metformin brands by Apotex Corp. Later, NDMA contamination was found in 7 lots of the time-release metformin hydrochloride extended release tablets by another company called Amneal Pharmaceuticals. The FDA classifies NDMA as a probable human carcinogen, which is a cancer-causing agent, and sets the standards for the maximum amount of the contaminant that's allowed in any medication. The most recent recall was voluntary by Amneal Pharmaceuticals to ensure that all lots are below the acceptable limits that are set forth by the FDA. NDMA contamination typically happens when medications containing metformin are produced in a laboratory environment, and cross-contamination can occur during the manufacturing process, as NDMA can also be introduced as a byproduct of the chemical used to make a specific medication. So you may not know that metformin is actually not as safe as you might think, because again, if your doctor gives it to you and it's the first line of defense, then what could possibly go wrong? But now I want you to focus on what happens even if you decide that you're going to take metformin and deal with some of these not so fun side effects. Now, for many of us, after 3 to 6 months of using metformin, you'll return to the doctor and you'll get another comprehensive blood test to measure your fasting blood glucose and your A1C once again. Now, you listen to your doctor's instructions. You're feeling proud of yourself because you listened to your doctor and you're taking your health seriously. But your fasting blood glucose is only 10 points lower than it was last time it was checked. It dropped from 147 down to 137. And your A1C reduced from 7.2% down to 7.0%, which is a 0.2% reduction. And both of these indicate that you're improving, but you're still living with type 2 diabetes. But you haven't missed a single dose, you say to yourself. You took medicine perfectly, literally every single day of the week, exactly as your doctor prescribed. So shouldn't you expect better results? Your doctor then thinks for a few minutes and says, you know what? I'm going to have to increase your dose of metformin by 500 milligrams per day to get you up to 1,000 milligrams per day. Or we're going to have to increase it to 1,500 milligrams per day, or maybe even 2,000 milligrams per day, because you know why? That's going to have a stronger effect. So you listen and you figure, well, there must be a method to this madness, and then you continue to abide. But soon the side effects get worse and you begin to feel helpless, but your doctor can't be wrong. Can he? Can she? Pretty soon you realize that metformin is nothing more than a fancy Band-Aid. Your doctor isn't actually giving you any solutions. They're literally just preventing your blood glucose from going higher faster. Eventually you get prescribed other blood glucose lowering medications like sulfonylureas like glipizide or glyburide or glimepiride that stimulate beta cells to produce more insulin, and that can cause low blood glucose and weight gain. Or maybe you're given what's called an SGLT2 inhibitor like Forxiga or Invokana or Jardiance. Do these names sound familiar? And these can increase the amount of glucose that you pee into the toilet, and they have side effects including urinary tract infections and low blood pressure. And you know what? If none of that works, then injecting insulin might be in your future. And trust me, that's the least attractive option of all. Now, that seems like a pretty miserable path, right? Trust me, we understand. As my wife Kylie likes to say, this is the medication train to nowhere. And it's a big reason why so many people die prematurely from the complications of diabetes, because you take one medication that then spawns into 2 and then 3, and then before you know it, you're taking an entire litany of medications. Now, I'm not here to promote fear. That's not my job. I want to teach you about an all too familiar path that many people who are prescribed metformin and other medications follow without even knowing it, because they're first given this medication to treat high blood glucose. And in a short period of time, that can spin out of control into taking multiple medications that cause more harm than the problem that they were originally trying to solve. So the question is this: how do you get out of this cycle? Hi, I'm Cyrus Khambatta, co-founder of Mastering Diabetes and the New York Times best-selling author of Mastering Diabetes. Now, the science behind diabetes can get very complicated very quickly, but fortunately, your solution doesn't have to be. If you'd like to learn the simple, proven, and guaranteed method to take your life back from diabetes, you can go to masteringdiabetes.org/start to get guidance, coaching, and more information today. It's time to sit in the driver's seat of your diabetes health and make this the last coaching program you ever need. Are you ready? If you are, visit masteringdiabetes.org/start to get started in the same coaching program that's helped over 10,000 people around the world. See you inside. Now, the most frustrating part here is that you can reverse type 2 diabetes and you can live a full and fulfilling life with type 1 diabetes. So why aren't you getting that answer by your doctor? Well, let's break it down. Now, most doctors aren't required to study nutrition because it's simply not a board certified specialty. They come out of medical school without an in-depth knowledge of the true causes of most metabolic conditions and the true root cause of insulin resistance, which is the central node to most chronic disease. And insulin resistance influences almost every chronic disease that you can think of. So in effect, doctors recommend what they're recommended. Now you can see on the screen here that insulin resistance is the central node that touches many different chronic diseases, including in the top right quadrant, all of the flavors of diabetes, including type 1, 1.5, prediabetes, type 2, and gestational diabetes. In addition to that, insulin resistance also increases your risk for other cardiovascular conditions like coronary artery disease, hypertension, atherosclerosis, and high cholesterol. In addition to that, people who develop more insulin resistance increase their risk for the development of many different types of cancer, as well as obesity, fatty liver disease, and Alzheimer's disease. Women who are living with PCOS, who are born with PCOS, end up becoming insulin resistant, and they are often prescribed metformin and other medications to lower their blood glucose. And finally, in the top left quadrant, insulin resistance increases your risk for the development of quote unquote inevitable consequences of diabetes, including neuropathy, blindness, kidney failure, retinopathy, and erectile dysfunction. And even though doctors like to claim that these are inevitable consequences of living with diabetes, the truth is that they're not. They're inevitable consequences of living with a nutrient-poor diet and poor lifestyle choices. Now, here's where the massive lobbying of the healthcare and pharma industry come into play, okay? They're constantly rubbing shoulders with doctors, recommending them particular types of drugs to prescribe. And doctors who don't know trust the institutional recommendations, and they just prescribe a quick pill because that's what they were told to do. Now, a huge part of this is that people and doctors and marketers and salesmen are all looking for a quick pill and for easy solutions. They want to package this health into a pill and give it to you because that requires you to do the least amount of effort. And most people want to think that we live in a world where you can just take a pill and that's the answer. So subconsciously, we want to think that we can change lifestyle diseases, but we don't want to change our lifestyle. And that's where things can get hairy. The result is a flow chart like the one that you see here. Okay. The first line of therapy is metformin and then lifestyle, but then everything else is pretty much about drugs. And this is how doctors are taught to think. It's never about changing your diet and integrating intermittent fasting and moving your body more. And if so, they might give you some general recommendation like, oh, well, it's about diet and lifestyle. But that doesn't really mean anything because diet and lifestyle are massive universes and you have to get into the specifics if you're going to promote any kind of real change. This is missing something massive. What it's missing is something called real food. It's missing things like moving your body. It's missing intermittent fasting. It's missing changing your mindset. It's missing lifestyle change. And lifestyle change is the single most powerful medication ever discovered by human beings that has effectively no side effects. The side effect is that you have to try. The side effect is that you have to put in some effort. And if you're willing to do that, it will pay you back 1,000-fold. Okay. This news doesn't come packaged in a pill, but it will save your life. It's all about what you eat, how you exercise, and the decisions that you make around when to eat. It's going to require a seismic shift of your mental frame. It's hard to hear this, I understand, because it can be overwhelming. But if you are prepared to make a seismic shift in your mentality by taking small steps over the course of time, okay, you can get rid of this idea that a quick pill solution is going to solve your problems. Instead, I want to give you the power. You don't have to pay anybody. You don't have to rely on anybody. All you have to do is rely on yourself. Now, the most consistent proven way is what's called the Mastering Diabetes method. It's called a low-fat, plant-based whole food diet. It's called exercising for 30 minutes per day. And it's called intermittent fasting, doing that either daily or weekly. These three changes are based off of hundreds of years of research. We wrote about it in our book that is cited by more than 800 scientific studies. And we guarantee your success if you follow the method. It doesn't require increasing your use of medications. In fact, it does the opposite. It lowers your use of medication, and you can go to your doctor and they can help you de-prescribe medications. And if you're still skeptical, listen to this. Now, a landmark study to investigate the efficacy of metformin was published in 2002 in the New England Journal of Medicine. In this study, researchers studied 3,234 non-diabetic individuals with an elevated fasting blood glucose and randomized them to either a lifestyle modification program or 850 milligrams of metformin twice per day. Those in the lifestyle modification group were told to lose 7% of their body weight and exercise for a minimum of 150 minutes per week, which is roughly equivalent to 5 days of 30 minutes of exercise per day. Now, you can see the effect of both lifestyle change and metformin on fasting blood glucose. The lifestyle change group is in black and the metformin group is in white. Lifestyle change created a measurable decrease in fasting blood glucose at 6 months in comparison with metformin, and that persisted throughout the entire duration of the study. In addition, lifestyle change reduced A1C more than metformin at all time points, with the exception of the 4-year time point. They followed these participants for 2.8 years and concluded that lifestyle intervention reduced the incidence of type 2 diabetes by 58%, whereas metformin reduced the incidence of type 2 diabetes by only 31%. That means that after rigorous statistical analysis, the researchers found that lifestyle change is about twice as effective as metformin. Now, that's a big difference and teaches you one thing very clearly: less medication and more lifestyle change is better. So why doesn't anybody know this? Well, the truth is that people do, and we're working hard to spread the word so that all of those 120 million people around the world who are given metformin as their first line of defense to lower their blood glucose will have the opportunity to know that while metformin can certainly be helpful in certain situations, it is not a long-term solution. And lifestyle change is easy, it's free, and it's available to you at every moment of every day. Now, metformin is often the first line of defense, but using it as your get out of diabetes now strategy is misleading and takes you down a dangerous path. It's half as effective as changing your lifestyle, according to that 2002 article in the New England Journal of Medicine. It's a Band-Aid solution that often results in more medication over the course of time. And it comes prepackaged with a collection of not so fun side effects. Changing your lifestyle is a time-tested and proven process that works like wildfire to reduce your fasting blood glucose and your A1C and your body weight. And it will be a better solution for you both in the short term and the long term. And when you add in the other stuff like positive benefits that you get from eating a low-fat, plant-based whole food diet, moving your body more, thinking more clearly, losing weight permanently, integrating intermittent fasting, there's a reason that we recommend this method to everyone, whether you're living with diabetes or not. Don't get stuck in the cycle. You're too smart for that. Take a moment, take a deep breath, and start the process of lifestyle change today. It'll likely be the most powerful thing that you ever do for yourself, and I guarantee it.